Question for you. What is the most annoying thing in all of RV life? Is it fuel prices? Maybe traffic? Or weather? Perhaps mechanical problems? Or mosquitoes?
Oh, there's still some in here, that's why.
Oh my god. I've just had the windows open the whole way to try and get them out.
Well, none of the above. The most annoying thing in all of RV life are those rattles and squeaks coming from your van while driving down the highway. And that is a scientific fact because I put it on a PowerPoint slide. So in this video I want to show you the 10 most annoying rattles in my RV, in my Winnebago Revel, and how I fix them. I added a bunch of these felt bump stops to all the cabinet doors, and they are a little wider than the ones Winnebago provided. So when the door closes now, it is really snug. It doesn't wiggle at all. It puts some pressure on the door and it no longer rattles. Same on the pantry door. And of course on the bathroom door as well. So this one is really Revel specific. There's an access panel here below the pantry. And there's the heat exchanger in here for the hydronic heating system. Well, this is probably a little hard to see. This is the heat exchanger here for the garage area. There's a black bracket and the heat exchanger by Winnebago is attached to the bracket with a couple of rivets here, 4 of them, 1 in each corner. And that had some play, so the heat exchanger rattled against the bracket like crazy, especially this piece of sheet metal here, the upper side of the heat exchanger. So I drilled out all the rivets, all 4 of them, and I replaced them with real bolts and really snug it down. So there's no longer any play between the bracket and the heat exchanger. And then I also taped some like that sound deadening material across here, so there's absolutely no play anymore and no rattle. Well, and I also attached some of these felt bump stops to the door. And in fact, felt is really the secret weapon to kill a lot of these rattles. I'm using a ton of these little bump stops from the furniture section of my local hardware store. I'm also using felt strips, self-adhesive, and then also felt sheet material that I cut to size and then double side glue it to anything that rattles. Well, and while we are here at the dining room table, I glued a little piece of carpet to the back of the driver's seat. So whenever the table bumps into the driver's seat, it now sits against this piece of carpet here. That wasn't so much a rattle, but more like a squeaking noise when the edge of the table rubbed against the plastic of the back seat. Now it runs or rubs against this piece of carpet and it no longer rattles or squeaks. The next one fixes some banging in the bedroom. There's this belt buckle thing up here which secures the bed in its highest position, and it is hanging loose and it dangled a lot. So I attached some self-adhesive Velcro strips, and now I can just stick it to the wall and it no longer makes any noise. The next one is up here in the bathroom. I put a little rubber foam pad thingy under the shower rod. Well, it's actually not the shower rod, it's like a clothing rod thing. So when it snaps in, it sits a lot tighter and it can no longer move. Well, it can move on the other side. So let me clip it in here as well. And now it is super strong, it no longer wiggles and it no longer rattles. And usually I don't even keep the rod up there. With a bit of PVC tubing, I made this little holder. So I can store it here out of the way. So one of the most annoying rattles comes from the Maxx Air Fan. And more specifically, it comes from the hood of the Maxx Air Fan. And I tried a bunch of things to get rid of the rattle, but nothing worked except for this. This is a magnetic cover by Van Essential. It doesn't really fix the rattle, but I can no longer hear it. And that's good enough for me. Tracking down this next one took me a really long time. I got some weird noises, rattles, from the front end of the van, especially at low speeds. And I didn't really know if this was caused by the upgraded suspension, the Van Compass Falcon shocks. Well, luckily it was something much simpler. This is the Mercedes provided floor jack, and these handle extensions, they were just sitting next to each other and kind of rattling a lot, right? So what I did is I put some electrical tape, wrapped it around them, so when they are in their styrofoam container now, they can no longer touch each other and they no longer rattle. Oh, and then I also put like a Velcro strip over this whole thing. The next one has something to do with the label right here, tire pressure. I'm sure these tire pressure recommendations are for a fully loaded van. However, mine isn't fully loaded. I put it on a scale, I know how much it weighs, and I reduced the tire pressure by quite a bit. I found some charts online given the recommended pressure for these tires per axle load, and that's what I adjusted it to. I'm not going to tell you how much pressure I run front and back. I couldn't really find any official chart. I just gathered the information from various sources, so I really don't want to make a recommendation, but I can tell you it's a lot less than what's on that chart there. And with less tire pressure, the entire ride is a little smoother, which also means a lot less rattles. The next one is about the sliding door, and I read about this fix in, I think, the Sprinter Source forums. If this pin up here is greased every once in a while, it stops a lot of the noises coming from the side door, even from a perfectly adjusted one. The next one is kind of an obvious one. I still wanted to mention it. I bought a bunch of these microfiber small towel things, and I stuffed them between my pots and between the lid and the pot, and then use some rubber bands to strap it all together. So less movement, less rattle. The next one lives under the bench seat in the plumbing area, and I added this little tab here so I can easily pull out this shelf. This here is the mixer valve for the hot water, so to adjust the temperature. And Winnebago just puts it in here loosely, and it has a lot of slack. It's basically only attached with the PAX hoses, which isn't really that clever. So I made this bracket here. This is just a piece of aluminum that I screwed into this side and then into the other side down there. And then with another of these little towels and some cable ties, I attached the valve to this aluminum piece, so it can no longer move, it can no longer slide around and rattle, and it can no longer detach itself from the PEX lines. So even if you don't have any rattle coming from this valve, go check it out and make sure it is secured properly. Oh, I also added a little magnetic closing thing here to this flap. Magnets up here and a matching metal plate in the lid. So it clicks in nicely now. So here's one you might laugh about. These puck lights have this little switch here, and it is just like a plastic knob thing which sits in this puck light very loosely, and well, it rattled. So what I ended up doing is, let me take out the light here real quick. I made a tiny little bump stop. This is basically a piece of foam that I just inserted here. So now this little bumper here no longer has any play. It sits firm against the switch and no longer makes any noise. So the next one is about the windows, or more specifically about the blinds of the window. They have this little magnetic strip here at the top of the blind and at the bottom of the mosquito screen. So they can nicely snap together. However, this magnetic strip is not attached to the actual blind. There's just a little groove that it is slid into. So there's a lot of play between the magnetic strip and the actual plastic thingy here, and that caused a lot of rattle. So what I ended up doing is, with a piece of electric tape, I just taped it on here, so there's no longer any movement between those two parts, and a lot less, or really not any noise anymore coming from the blinds of the side window. And I know a common fix for exactly this problem is just to close those two parts of the blind, snap them together, and then move them into a certain position. However, with this fix, I can do whatever I want with the blinds, leave them open, close them, move them to any position, and it no longer rattles. And I have another one about windows, and more specifically about this front window here. At higher speeds, and when the wind blows from the right direction, it vibrates a lot, and I think that's because it floats inside of the rubber seal. So what I ended up doing is I put a little electrical tape against this lip here, so the wind can no longer catch it from this side, which stops a lot of the vibration. I actually made a separate video about that fix. Link is down in the video description. Well, after all these fixes, you might wonder how my van sounds when driving down the road. And of course, it is impossible to record something that you cannot hear. Instead, here's an artist's impression of what it feels like driving my van down the highway. Well, and there you have it. This is all I did to my van, and really it resulted in a mostly rattle-free experience. And I know the situation in your van, in your RV, might be very different. And even in my RV, I might develop some new rattles based on weather, based on temperature, humidity, or perhaps just over time, when over the next 10,000 miles something else rattles loose. So this wasn't a fully comprehensive list for sure, but hopefully it gives you some ideas what you look for, and perhaps you can fix a few rattles in your van for a way more enjoyable ride. In any case, that's all I had for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.